Alright, Part 1502, Environmental Impact Statement. The purpose of implementation of statutory requirements for the statement. The major federal action requirement of the preparation of environmental impact statement. The timing of the interdisciplinary preparation, page page limit, the writing, draft, final, supplemental statement, recommended format, cover sheet, summary, purpose of the needed alternative included with the proposed action effective of the environmental consequence listed. The preparer's appendix, circulation, environmental impact of the hearing, incorporating reference for the incomplete, unavailable information, cost, benefit analysis, methodology, scientific accuracy, environmental review, and Consolation requirements. 15021 for the purpose of the environmental impact statement to serve the action force of the device, ensuring that the policy with the goal of the defined with the act that are infused into the ongoing program and action for the federal government that shall provide with the full fair discussions of significant environmental impact shall inform the decision maker with a public reasonable alternative which would avoid minimizing adverse impact that enhance the quality of the human and environmental agency shall focus on the significant environmental issue for the alternative shall be review the paperwork accumulation of the extraneous background data statement shall be concise, clear, and to the point that shall be supported by evidence that the agency has made with the necessary environmental analysis. Environmental impact statement is more than a disclosure statement. This should be used with a federal official in conjunction with the other relevant materials of plan actions and make decisions. 15022 implementation. To achieve the purpose set forth in 15021, the agency shall prepare environmental impact statement of the following manner. Environmental impact statement shall be analytical rather than encyclopedic. Impact shall be discussed in the portion of their significance shall be only with a brief discussion on other significant issues as in finding no significant impact, but they should be only an enough decision to show why more study is not warranted. Environmental impact shall be kept concise, shall be no longer within absolute necessary comply with the National Environmental Policy Act with those regulations. Length should be very first for the potential environmental problems, then projected size. Environmental impact statement shall show the how alternatives considered into the decision based on that will or will not achieve the requirements of Section 101 and 102.1 of the Act of the Environmental Law and Policies. The range of the alternative discussed environmental impact statements of the shall encompass with the conservative ultimate agency decision maker agency shall not commit resource prejudicing selection of alternatives before making a final decision. 15061 environmental impact statement that shall serve the means of assessing the environmental impact of the proposed agency actions rather than justifying the decision already made. 15023 statutory requirements of the statement as required by Section 1022C, the National Environmental Policy Act of Environmental Impact Statement of 1508. 11 are to be included a recommended report on proposal 1508-23 for legislation 1508 and 17 other major federal action 1508-18 significant 1508-27 and affecting 1508-3 and 1508 quality human environmental 1508-14. 15024 major federal action requirement of the preparation of the environmental impact statement. The agency shall make the proposal of the wish and the subject of the environmental impact of the statement the properly defined with the agency shall give the criteria scope of the 1508-25 the determinant of the proposal shall be the subject of the particular statement. Proposal of the parts of the proposal are related to each of the closely if enough to be in effect. Signal course of the action shall be evaluated in a single impact statement. The environmental impact statement that may be prepared with the sometimes required with a broad federal action with the adoption of the new agency program of the regulation 1508-18. The agency shall prepare the statement on the board of the actions, broad actions, so that relevant policy for the time coincide with the meaningful points in the agency action. Agency planning and decision making the preparing statement on the broad actions include a proposal by one or more than agency. The agency may find it useful to evaluate proposal if in one of the following ways geographically includes the action occurring with the same with the general location such as the valley, water region, or metropolitan area general, including such actions such relevant similarities within some of the common type of the impact alternative of the method of the implementation medium and subject matter. By stages in technical development, including federal and federally assisted research development, demonstrated program with the new technology which apply with a significantly affect with the quality of the human environment. Statements that may be prepared on such a program shall be available before the program has reached the stage of the investment over the commitment, implement likely to determine the subsequent development of restricted later alternatives. Agency shall, as appropriate, employ the scope of the 1501, something tearing of 1502-20, with the other methods listed in 1504, 1504, and 1505 to relate broad, narrow action to avoid duplicating delay. 15025 timing. An agency shall commence with the preparation of the environmental impact statement as close as possible to the time of the agency to develop with the president of the proposal of the 1508-23. So that the preparation can be complete within time with the final statement, include with the recommendation of the report on the proposal of the statement that shall be prepared early enough so that they can serve as a practically important contribution for the decision process that will not already be rationalized, justifying decision already made in 1502 C, 1501 1502 for the instance. If the project directly undertaken the federal agency's environmental impact statement shall be prepared in feasibility with the analysis of the go or no-go stage, which may be supplemented at a later stage as necessary. For application for the agency's appropriate environmental assessment of the statement shall be commenced with no later than immediately after the application is received. Federal agencies are encouraged to begin preparation for such assessment statements earlier, preferably jointly with the applicable state and local agencies. For adjunction from the final environmental impact statement, it should normally proceed with the final statement of recommendation of the portion of the public hearing related to the impact study with the appropriate circumstance for the statement may be followed. The preliminary hearing designed to gather the information for the use of the statement. For informing rulemaking of the draft environmental impact statement, it shall normally accompany with the proposed life rules. 1502-6 Interdisciplinary preparation. Environmental impact statement shall be prepared for the interdisciplinary approach, which will ensure the integrated use of the natural and social science of the environmental design art. Section 1022A of the Act of the discipline prepared shall be appropriate with the scope of the issue identified within the scoping of the process. 15017. 15027 The page limit the text in the final environmental impact statement. The paragraphs D through EG of the 15010 shall normally be less than 150 pages for purposes of the unusual scope of the complexity shall be normally be less than 300 pages. 15028 writing. Environmental impact statement shall be written in the plain language, making for the appropriate graphic for the decision maker of the public can be readily understanding. If the agency shall employ writers to clearly propose editors to write the review edit statement, which will be based upon analysis supporting data for the natural and social sciences of the environmental design arts. 15029 drafting final and supplemental statement. To expect with the proposal legislative with the provided 15068 with environmental impact statement that they shall be prepared in 2 stages and may be supplemented. Drafting environmental impact statement that shall be prepared with accordance with the scope of the decided upon with the scope of the process of the lead agency shall work with the cooperative agency shall be obtained with the comments of the required with the part 1503 with the chapter of the draft statement must be fulfilled to satisfy full extent with the possible with the requirements established within the final statement in this Act of 1022C is see with the if the draft statement is inadequate to preclude with the meaning of full analysis of the agency shall prepare with the circulate with the revised draft with the appropriate portion. Agency shall make it every effort to discuss appropriate points with the draft statement with all major points of the view with the environmental impact with the alternatives included in the proposed action. Final environmental impact statement that shall respond with the comments required in parts of the 1503 with the chapter the agency shall discuss the appropriate points of the final statement of the end. Any reasonable opposing view with which has not adequately discussed the draft statement that shall indicate the reasons to respond with the issue raised. Agencies shall prepare supplementals to either draft the final environmental impact statement. The agencies make with a substantial change with the proposed action with the relevant environmental concerns. There are significant new circumstances with the information relevant to the environmental concern for the bearing on the proposed action and its impact. We also prepare supplements with when an agency determines the purpose of the act will further by doing so. Should that procedural introducing supplement with the formal administrative record and such record exists, shall prepare, circulate, and final supplement as to a statement in the same fashion exclusively of scoping of the draft of the final statement unless alternative procedures are approved by the council. Alright, 1502.10 recommended format. Agency shall use the format environmental impact statements which will encourage good analysis, clear presentation with the alternatives include proposed action following standard format with environmental impact statement that should be filed unless the agency determines that there is compelling with reason to do so. Cover sheet, summary table of contents, purpose of the need for action. Alternatives included proposed section 1022C3, 1022E of this act effective the environmental consequence, especially 1022C1, 2, 4, and 5. Of this act, with this prepared list of the agency, organization, persons to whom copies of the statement are sent, index and appendixes if needed. If the different format is used, it shall include the A, B, C, H, I, J for this section, which shall include the substance of the paragraph D, E, F, and G, and K. Section is further described in 1502.11 through 1502.18 in if any appropriate form. 1502.11. The cover sheet shall not exceed one page, but it shall include the list of the reasonable agencies, include with the lead agency, any cooperating agency with the title of the proposed action, the subject with the statement of the appropriate titles of the related with the cooperating agency action, together with the statement of the country and other jurisdiction have applicable where the action is located, the name of the address, the telephone number of the person for the agency who can supply with the further information, designation of the statement as a draft or final supplement, one page paragraph abstract with the same of the day of the which complaint comments over the receipt of the computer with cooperating with the Environmental Protection Agency on the 150610 with the information required. The suggestion may be entered within the same form 424, items 4, 6, 7, 10, and 18. Alright, 1502.12. Summary. Each of the environmental impact statements shall contain the summary with the accurately summarize the statement. The summary is stressed over the major conclusion area with the controversy will include the issue raised by the agencies and the public and issues to be resolved, including the choice of among the alternative. The summary will not exceed 15 pages. Purpose and need. Statement shall briefly specify the underlying purpose and need for which the agency is responding to proposing alternatives, include the proposed action. 1502.14. All alternatives, including proposed action. The section heart of the environmental impact statement, the base of the information and analysis presented with the section affected environment 1502.15, the environmental consequence 1502.16, and should present the environmental impacts of the proposal alternative in cooperative form. The sharply define the issue for the providing clearly base for the choice of the among the option for the decision maker of the public and section of the agency. Rigorously explore, objectively evaluate all reasonable alternatives for alternatives which are eliminated with a detailed study for the briefly discover the reason for their being eliminated. For substantial treatment to each of the eliminated alternatives to consider the detail, include the proposed actions of the review that may evaluate the comparative measure. Include reasonable alternatives not within their jurisdiction of the lead agency. Include the alternative no action, but they identify the agency preferred alternative. The alternatives if one more exists. If the draft statement identified such alternative in final statement, unless other law prohibits the expression of such preference. Include appropriate mitigation measures not already included with the proposed action of the alternatives. Alright, 1502.15, effective environment. The environmental impact statement shall sufficiently describe the environmental area to be effectively created by alternative under the consideration description shall be no longer with the necessary to understand the effect of the alternative data analysis. Statement shall demonstrate with the importance of the impact with less importance material summarized consolidated. Simply reference the agency shall avoid use of bulk in statements, and they shall concentrate efforts with the attention for the important use verbose description of the effective environmental and or themselves with no measure adequacy of the other environmental impact statement. 1502.16 Environmental consequences. This section is the analytical basis for the comparison of 1502.14 with a short consolidated discussion of the elements required in section 1022C1 and 2 and 4 and 5, the National Environmental Protection and Policy Act, or within the scope of the statement within so much of the section 1022C3 necessary to support the comparison of the discussion will be included with the environmental impact of the alternative, included the proposed action which may adversely environmental effects which cannot be avoided but should be proposed and to be implemented. The relationship between the short-term use of the man's environmental and the maintenance and enhancement of the long-term productivity, any irreversible or irretrievable comments of the resource of which would be involved, and the proposal should be implemented with the section should not duplicate discussion 1502.14 it shall be included in discussion direct effects of their significance 1508, indirect effects of their significance 1508.8. Are your possible conflicts between the proposed action and the objective of the federal, regional, with the state and local, and in the case of the reservation of the Indian tribe land use of the plan policy with the control of the area concerned 1506.2d. Environmental effects for the alternatives include with the proposed action. The comparison of 1502.14 will be based on the discussion of environmental injury requirements, conservation potential, various alternative mitigation measures, natural depletatory resource requirements, the conservation potential of the various alternative mitigation requirements, urban quality, historical control, cultural resource design for the build environmental meeting, environmental including residual reuse, conservation potential, various alternative mitigation measures, means to mitigate adverse environmental impacts if not fully covered in 1502.14f. Or you have to have 1502.17 list of the preparers. Environmental impact statement should be the list of the name of the gift with the qualification, expertise, experience with the professional disciplines of the person who are preliminary responsible for preparing the environmental impact statement. Significant background papers shall include the basic components of the statement of the 1502.6 through 1508. 1502 to 6 to 1502.8. Possible person from the responsible for the particular with the analysis include analysis in the background paper that shall identify the normally with the list will not exceed 2 pages. All right, 1502.18, appendix. Any of the agency prepares an appendix to an environmental impact statement of the appendix that consists of the material prepared with a connection with the environmental impact statement as of the distinctive material which is not so prepared and which is incorporated by reference 1502.21. Alright, normally consists of the material within the substantive of any of the analysis fundamental for the impact statement that normally be analytical relevant to the decision to be made to be circulated with the environmental impact statement that be readily be available to make request. 1502.19 circulation of the environmental impact statement. The agency shall circulate with the entire draft of the final impact statement except with a certain appendix that is provided with 1502.18d unchanged statement that provided with the 1503.4 and C. However, the statement if the unusually long the agency may circulate with a summary instead except for the entire statement that shall be furnished into the federal agency with the jurisdiction allowed with a special expertise with respect with the environmental impact involved in an appropriate federal, state, local agency of the authorized, develop, and enforce an environmental standard for the applicability, if any of the person, organization, agency requesting entire environmental impact statement. In this case, the final or environmental impact statement of any person, organization, agency that has submitted the substantive comments on the draft. If the agency circulate for the summary, but thereafter receive the timely request for the entire statement for the additional time for the comment, of the time for that of the requester only shall be extended to at least 15 days beyond the minimum period. 1502.20 Tarrying. Agencies are encouraged with the tarry of their environmental impact statement with eliminating the repetitive discussions of the same issue to focus on the actual issue of the right of the decision for each of the level of environmental review. 1508.28 Whenever the broad environmental impact statement that has been prepared, such as a program and the policy statement, the subsequent statement of or environmental assessment that is then prepared with the action included with the entire program policy with respect to the site-specific action subsequent statement environmental assessment with the need to only summarize the issue of the discussed with the broader statement that incorporated the decision. Further, with a broader statement, the reference of the such shall concentrate within an issue specifically subsequent action. The subsequent document shall state that the earlier document is available. Sharing may also be appropriate for a different stage of the actions. 1508.28. All right. 1502.21 Incorporated reference. Our agency shall incorporate the material into the environmental impact statement with the reference of the effect of the shall be cut down with the bulk without impeding the agency for the public review of the agency. The incorporated material shall be inside within the statement and contain briefly with describing the material may be incorporated with the reference and left as reasonably available for the inspection potentially interested person, with time allowing for the comment of the material based for the proprietary data for itself not be available to review. The comment shall not be incorporated by the reference. 1502.22 for the incomplete, unavailable information for the agency for the evaluating reasonably with foreseeable significant adverse effects for the human environmental impact. The statement there is incomplete with unavailable information for the agency shall always make clearly such information lacking incomplete with information relevant to the reasonably foreseeable significant adversely impacts of essential to reason choice among the alternative for the overall cost for the obtaining it into the non-exuberant agency shall include the information for the environmental impact statement. If the information relevant to reasonably foreseeable significant adversely impact cannot be obtained because of the overall cost of the obtaining of the exuberant means for the obtaining is not known, the agency shall include within the environmental impact statement a statement of the such information is incomplete and unavailable statement the relevance of the incomplete and unavailable information evaluating reasonably foreseeable significant adversely impact for the human environment through a summary of this incredibly scientific environment which are relevant to evaluating reasonable foreseeable significant adverse impacts on the human environment for the agency evaluating such impacts based on the theoretical approach of the research methods of the generally accepted scientific community for purposes of this section reasonable foreseeable with includes impact with a high having catastrophic consequences, or even if they are probability of occurrence and low, provided with analysis for the impact of the support with the credibility scientific evidence not based on the pure conjuncture as in with a rule of reason. Amended regulation with applicable to do environmental impact statement with a notice of intent, Title 40 CFR 1508.2. 22 published for the Federal Register on Information and Public May 27, 1986 for environmental impact statement. In progress, agencies may choose to comply with requirements of either original or amended regulations. Alright, 1502.23 cost benefit analysis. For the cost benefit analysis relevant to the choice among the environmental different alternatives being considered for the proposed the action should be incorporated by the reference appended to the statement of the of the evaluating environmental consequences for the adequacy of the compliance with the section 102.2b. This act statement shall, when cost benefit analysis is prepared, and discover the relationship between the analysis and any analysis unquantified environmental impact values amended for the purpose of the complying with the act of the weighing of the merits of the drawback of the various alternatives that need not to be displayed with the monetary cost benefit analysis should not be when there are important quality qualitative consideration in the event with the environmental impact statement, which shall less indicate those consideration, including factors not related to environmental quality, likely to be relevant in important decision making. Alright, 1502.24 Methodology, Scientific Accuracy. Agency shall ensure the professional integrity, scientific integrity of the discussion and analysis of the environmental impact statement. They shall identify any of the methodology shown in the explicit reference footnote of the scientific and other source relied on upon conclusion of the statement. The agency may place a decision of the methodology in appendix. Alright, 1502.25 Environmental Review and Consolation requirement. To the full extent of the possible, the agency will prepare the draft environmental impact statement concurrently with integrate with environmental impact analysis related surveys and studies required by the Fish and Wildlife Coordination Act and the National Historic Preservation Act of the 1966 Endangered Species Act of 1973, other environmental review laws and executive orders. Draft environmental impact statement shall list the federal permanent license and other entitlements which must be obtained to implement the proposal. If it is uncertain whether the federal permanent license or other entitlement is necessary, so the draft environmental impact statement should indicate. 1503 Commenting.